Ethical issues in international business, working standards and conditions. Rights that we have here in the US, such as freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of movement, and freedom from political repression, are usually taken for granted, especially because they are not universally accepted, and this changes and affects the way businesses operate in other countries. A historical example of this would be South Africa in the 1990s. During this time, the apartheid system was still in place, and this was a system that denied basic political rights to the majority of the non white population. It mandated segregation between whites and non whites, usually in the form of public facilities and social events. So, you as a business person would ask yourself, would operating in this country support the oppressive government? In come the Sullivan Principles, which were named after Leon Sullivan, a Black Baptist minister who was also a member of the General Motors Board of Directors. He urged that it was okay to operate in South America as long as General Motors doesn't obey apartheid laws in its own operations as a way of passive resistance, and B, the company should do everything in its power to promote termination of apartheid laws. 10 years later, though, Sullivan concluded that it was not sufficient and no company can ethically operate in South America even under his principles. Some inappropriate guidelines for ethical decision making are strawman ethics. The first one being the Friedman Doctrine that rejects the idea that businesses should undertake social expenditures beyond those required by law, and that improving the working conditions will reduce profits and making it not appropriate to undertake the bettering of working conditions. The second one is cultural relativism, which is the belief that ethics are a reflection of culture, so a firm should adopt the culture where it is operating. Most popular in the form as, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. But if the country of where you are operating has the culture of slavery, is it okay to use slave labor? This idea rejects that universal ideas of morality transcend through different cultures. The third one is righteous moralist, which is that multinationals' home country standards are the appropriate ones to follow in a foreign country. This one is usually associated with managers from developed nations. Although it sounds good at first, it does have its flaws. Like if a US company offers US minimum wage, it will completely void its reason for operating and investing in that country to begin with. The last one is naive immoralist, which is that a manager from a multinational should not follow ethical norms if managers from that country aren't either. An example of this would be in the form of a bribe if a manager in Colombia was paying a drug lord not to bomb the plant or kidnap the workers. An argument for doing the bribe, though, would be that it's doing more good than harm by keeping his workers in his plant safe. A more popular approach comes in utilitarian ethics. This is that the moral worth of actions or practices is determined by their consequences and is committed to the maximization of goods and the minimization of harm. That the best decisions are the ones that produce the greatest goods for the greatest number of people. An example of this would be an oil company considering drilling in the Alaskan wildlife preservation. It must weigh the economic benefits of increased oil production and the creation of jobs against the costs of environmental degradation in a fragile ecosystem. The problem is, how do you measure the benefits, costs, and risks of an action? It is usually not possible because of limited knowledge. Another popular approach is the Kantian ethics, which is that people should be treated as ends as opposed to the means to an end, that people have dignity and need to be respected. In violation of ethics would be when workers are treated as machines, such as working long hours with no breaks, like a machine usually does. People are usually resonate with the Kantian ethics because it's not based on sympathy but on respect,